I want to welcome you to this month's webinar for the membership of the National Chimney Sweep Guild. And I want to start this with a little story. I was listening to a TED talk the other day by a person that I admire greatly in this world for his accomplishments in business. And he was speaking, and his subject matter was, how bad do you want it? And it made me think there are so many people that have dreams in this world, and it could be business dreams, it could be personal, it could be to be debt free, it could be to have a very culture ridden workforce, it could be any number of things. You see, we're all individuals, and the dreams that we have are vastly important to each and every one of us. But as the speaker said, how bad do you want it? So, to start this off, let me share a little story with you I found as I researched the internet for how bad do you want it? And the story is about a young man. And this young man desired business success in this world. And he just couldn't find his path to get there. So he found a master of business. And he went to the master and said, Master, help me find the path to success. And so they had a short conversation, and the master said, okay, meet me on the beach at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. 4 a.m. So the young man set his alarm clock and he went to the beach. Now you've got to understand, this young man was deathly afraid of the water. So as he met the master on the beach, the master said, let's go in the water. Now remember, this young man's deathly afraid of the water. So they went out in the water a little ways and went about knee deep. And the young man's panic was starting to rise because, again, he was fearful of water. And after they stood there with the water about their knees, he said, come, let's go deeper. And they went farther out into the water to where it was around waist deep. And they stood there talking. And then the master said, let's go further till the water was up to his neck. Now, the young man's panic was surely rising at this point because, again, he was very afraid of the water. And all of a sudden, the master took hold of the young man and pushed him under the water and held him down under the water. And the young man was sitting there and he was flapping his arms trying to escape. He just couldn't do it. And finally, the master let him up out of the water. And he was gasping for breath at this point, gasping for breath, panic stricken. And the master asked him, as you were under the water, what did you most desire? And the student said, to be able to breathe. And the master said, did anything else matter to you at that time? He said, no, I just wanted to breathe. And the master said to him, that's the secret. Whenever you desire success, as much as you desired simply being able to breathe, then you'll go there because it's all a matter of how bad do you want it? You see, you survived your panic, you survived the fear, and you're now ready to move forward. So, as you look at this, often we may read or hear of success stories in this world, but do we ever look at what the success stories of this world have had to go through to get there? You know, often as you're going through this, and I've seen this happen in business where people were deeply in debt. I mean, deeply to the point of they probably should have given up. But what did they do? They bore down. They learned about their numbers. They learned what they had to do. Or another is maybe they have a workforce and the culture has really gone crappy. But the reason it's gone crappy is because there's people on that workforce that need to go away. They're simply causing the rest of the barrel of people to rot. And once they made that change, then success started coming. They got themselves in line with what they wanted. They started achieving their goals. So one of the things I encourage people to do is understand who are the significant failures in this world. So I went into the internet, and even though I've studied this quite a few times, I wanted to see who were some of the leading failures that got past the struggle of failure and moved forward. And it's really an amazing list. And I'm going to give you a couple of these names that you can think about as people you have heard of in your life. And one of them is probably acknowledged as the greatest president that ever lived. His name was Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln led us through a period where our country was divided and brought the country together. But earlier in life, Abe had many, many failures. If you research this, you'll see he had failed so many times. Another person is Einstein. So many failures, it was unreal. But he kept striving. And what did he do? He learned from those failures. Who's another person that we can look at? Well, let's look at one of the stars in the world of entertainment today, Beyonce. Beyonce knows and what all she went through. But she went through significant failures in her life also. Okay, you know, she was on Star Search. She was only 9 years old when Star Search, and they failed in that one. Okay, they failed, and they kept going. Later, she finally got signed with Columbia Records, and then things moved ahead. How about another person from the world, one of the richest men in the world, Mr. Bill Gates? If we look at Bill Gates, significant failure in Bill Gates's life also. It's a significant story. Read up about him. Read up about the failures that Bill Gates had in his life. And one of my favorite ones is Colonel Harlan Sanders. I actually was traveling through Kentucky a few years ago, going to the National Chimney Sweep Guild meeting in Columbus, Ohio. And we went very close to where Colonel Sanders had his motel and his restaurant and his service station. But what happened was they put an interstate there. And all of a sudden, people stopped talking. And he had failed in so many ways in his life, so many different businesses. But he had an idea of selling a fried chicken recipe. And he traveled around the country in his car. He was only getting a $105 Social Security check a month. He was 65 years old. Think about that. But he set out to sell it. And it said he was rejected by 1,009 restaurants before the first one agreed to the idea. Think about that. 1,009 times a failure till he finally succeeded and managed to move to his dream. In your childhood, did you ever read books by Dr. Seuss? You know, this is another significant story because Dr. Seuss had all kinds of failure in his life trying to be a published author. And like I said, I can remember from my childhood reading the Dr. Seuss books that were out there and available. George Lucas, the filmmaker, it wasn't easy for him. He had significant failures. Harrison Ford, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Think about this. He was rejected in many, many movie roles. And finally, he landed in American Graffiti. And then from there, the world turned around. Okay? It turned around for him. Another significant business story is Henry Ford and the Ford Motor Company. And how many times Mr. Ford failed until he put the right combination together. It's amazing. It's truly amazing as you read these stories. Here's another one. Jerry Seinfeld had his own TV show written after his own life. Significant success, or failures, before he found that significant success. How about Jack Canfield? What's he known for? He wrote the book series Chicken Soup for the Soul. It's a series of books and one of the best-selling authors of all time. But it wasn't until he was 48 years old and he teamed up with a guy by the name of Mark Victor Hansen that he set out to write this book to help inspire and motivate people to achieve their dreams. This list of people just goes on and on and on of the people that are out there. The author of the Harry Potter books, J.K. Rowling, another person who has significant rejections and failures for things that she wrote, and no one would accept her for the writer that she truly was and the greatness that she had in her books. The stories keep on. It just keeps on going. If you look and just read about these, the stories are significant. So, what did they all do? They all learned from their failures. They learned from their failures. They learned from them. And this is what more done. Another one is Mark Cuban. You look at it, he's on television, he owns the Dallas Mavericks. It wasn't easy for him. How about Mark Zuckerberg, the guy that started Facebook? He had to go through a series of lawsuits and had to pay off to get those going to develop one of the leading social networks in America. Michael Jordan, cut from his basketball team when he was in school. But did he give up? No. He kept trying. He kept trying. His mother encouraged him. So that's what often takes. It takes someone to encourage us. Someone that sees that stardom that's in there. Is anyone encouraging you? Another guy's Milton Hershey of the Hershey chocolate fortune, declared bankruptcy. He had all kinds of problems. How about Miss Oprah Winfrey? At one time, she was fired. She was deemed to not be fit to be on television. And the story goes on. You can read about Richard Branson. Again, different people, it just goes on and on and on. So Shira Honda cars, read his story. Stephen King, he sold over 350 million books. But again, he was rejected so many times. It was even said that every time a rejection letter came in, he put it on a nail on the wall. But after a while, the nail couldn't even hold them all. He had to drive a spike in his room, into his wall to do that. Another person, Steve Jobs, Apple. He lost the company at one time, but he came back. Director Steven Spielberg, another guy. What about Sylvester Stallone? Sylvester Stallone, he had to really dig deep to become the success that he became. And it's just all this. Like I said, just do some research of failures in this world. Another one, how about the founder of Walt Disney World and Disneyland, Walt Disney? He failed and he was rejected, but did he give up? No, he didn't. Winston Churchill guided England through World War II, a renowned leader in his time, a man that has gone down in history. He lost a lot of elections, but did he give up? No, he didn't. So as you see, what happens here is we have to keep that drive. We're going to have failures. We are human beings. And it begs the question, every time you hit failure, you got to ask yourself, just how bad do I want this? How bad do I want it? But there's another side of success. And this is the one that I caution you because so often we see people fall into this trap. And the trap is they have achieved their dreams, but then they take the eye off the ball. They've got business success, but instead of inspecting for what they expect, they just go off into a fantasy world. They think everything is great. It's all vacation time. But as a business owner, when you get there, you've got to stay on top of it. I've seen significant business owners that were really doing a fabulous job. And because inattention to detail, things started to go away. Or worse, How about the people in the entertainment industry? The people that we may have watched perform on a stage, we may have watched them in a movie. They could have been a rock and roll singer, a country western singer, or anything. They reached that plateau, they have reached that stardom. But as you come to this, what are the people that come to mind that have attained that fame and fortune and it went away? How about John Belushi? Saturday Night Live, fame and fortune took him away. If we look at it, Chris Farley, the list goes on. Judy Garland, Jimi Hendrix, Michael Jackson, all of these different people, Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, Elvis Presley, Prince, fentanyl took him, okay? Anna Nicole Smith. It was just simply they didn't handle the fame. They reached that pinnacle of success. But by reaching that pinnacle of success, they couldn't control it. Fame and fortune overtook them. And that's what you've got to do. As you go through life, there's going to be failures. And what each and every one of us has to do is we have to learn to fail forward, as Dr. John Maxwell professes. Fail forward. What are the things that we have to do in order to reach that level of success, that dream we have? You know, when you look at it, how many people say, I want to lose weight, but how many are willing to go through that? Or they say they want to be debt free, but they cannot put a control on their expenses. They cannot create budgets. They live for today. And that's the problem. You've got to have your priorities in order. You've got to have your strategic plan. And as you build this strategic plan, you also have to remember you have to follow that plan. So here's my advice to you. Set your goals. Set your goals. And ask yourself as you go through this, how bad do I want it? And if you want it bad enough, you know something? You can attain everything in your life that you dream of, but you're going to have to bear down. And it's going to depend on you and the hard work you put into it to make it happen. So I appreciate you joining me this month. This is a rather short webinar. It's not real long, but I hope you've heard something in here that maybe can inspire you to make it to that next level. My name's Jerry Eisenhower. I'm with CBC Success Group. And each and every month, it's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's a pleasure to be able to present to you in this way. We'll see you next month on our next monthly webinar for the National Chimney Sweep Guild.